This is the Launchpad session. So what we're going to do is introduce Launchpad very quickly. I'll do that, and then run a panel on advanced manufacturing and manufacturing in Western Sydney in particular. So I'll introduce the speakers as they come along, but very briefly, I'll introduce Don Wright, who is our Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. He's going to be on the panel later. Launchpad team is also here. So Rebecca Pham is here. She's our manager Launchpad, and then Karthik is also part of our team. So it's exciting thing to have half of the Launchpad team on this event. So without any further ado, I'll just briefly introduce Launchpad to you. And many of you are already familiar with Launchpad and its work. But just to briefly introduce what we do, if I can find how to play my slides. So Launchpad was established in 2015, and we started out as a startup incubator, and we very much are still a startup incubator. We've got 2 locations at the moment, Verrington and Parramatta, and we are open to Western Sydney community. And the main focus that Launchpad has is the ecosystem building. And when we say ecosystem, it's the innovation ecosystem that we want to build and are continuing to build in and around Western Sydney. And our focus is on 4 different areas. So we are a university-based startup, so we've got a research commercialization support focus. So we support our researchers and help commercialize research. Also, being part of university, we are very focused on student entrepreneurship training and development. So we've got programs under that stream. And we are typically a startup incubator. So we've got startup incubation and acceleration support services and offerings. And the last bit of Launchpad is SME innovation. And that's where this presentation fits in. So right from the start, Launchpad has a mandate to support the region, and our region, as we all know, is a primarily SME-based region. It's a lot of manufacturing, a very strong and thriving manufacturing community, I must say. So we have a very strong focus on supporting that community. So in terms of the work, if I just outline the work that we do, we help in translation of research, commercialization. We have a very strong focus on knowledge and skills building, and also on collaboration. Now, and as I said, you know, what we're doing is we're building the Western Sydney's innovation ecosystem, and we're not only building it, but connecting it or attempting to connect it to other innovation ecosystem regions that are in Australia and beyond. Now, this slide is very focused on what we've achieved in the startup space. So we've had 188 startups so far, and we do a lot of activities, not only around startups, but in the other areas that I mentioned just previously. So we do a lot of events, we do a lot of showcases, and we sort of bring the different parts of the community together. I'll try to find, okay, I'll skip this slide, but basically what this slide says is that we've got a strong focus on technology and industry at the same time. So advanced manufacturing, as you can see in the far left-hand side, is one of our biggest focuses. Health and medtech, gaming simulation, so on and so forth. Similarly, we also have a very strong focus on the emerging and advanced technology. And again, you know, advanced manufacturing fits in very nicely there. Now, in terms of our advanced manufacturing offering and what we do in that space, we have a Western 4.0 network, which is a small network of companies at the moment, and we've got speakers on panel that are from that network or part of that network. But in saying that it is small, it is set to grow. But the big thing about the network is that it brings in different sort of companies from across Western Sydney that are at different stages. and they're from different forms of manufacturing. So it's a very it's our Foundation Western 4.0 group, and it's small, but it's a highly diverse group, if I must. And we call it the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Cluster, the work that we are doing in this space. In terms of Western 4.0, our focus areas are skills training. So we're working on a training platform that we're going to roll out next year, and which is going to be focused on training and development in several areas. Very focused on industry networking, and our breakfasts and our Western 4.0 network is focused on that, bringing the industry together, and also connecting industry to other parts of the ecosystem as well. We also focus on tech demonstration, so bringing in new forms of technology and introducing them to the companies in Western Sydney. R&D support and prototyping, as I mentioned before, connecting them back to the university and providing that research and development support, and having linkages to the fundings and grant programs. So we partner with the New South Wales and the federal governments on several levels, and basically connect our manufacturing community to funding opportunities and grants opportunities. And one of the things that we are extremely focused on is the business model innovation, because our whole mandate, as I said, under Western 4.0 is transforming the region, transforming the state of industry in Western Sydney. So we do quite a bit of work with the industry on that front, and work with the industry to see, how should a company, for example, be thinking about the strategic development for the coming years, and to be an active player and part of the innovation ecosystem, and to be an advanced company. So this is a brief introduction of Launchpad and the work that we do under Western 4.0. And I'll be happy to take any questions later, but I think we have already sort of lost some time. So our next speaker is Anders, who's part of our community and part of Launchpad as well. So he has a presentation, and their work is around supporting the connection and collaboration between industry and research institutions such as ours. So over to you, Anders.
Thank you very much, Inu. And so I have been asked to give some ideas how to better have collaborations between industry and academic research and academic organizations. So I find this is a very, very big topic, and it's going to be hard for me to summarize everything in 5 minutes. So bear with me, and also I might be being insulting somebody here, but these are my very private and my opinion, and this is how I think needs to be pointed out. So I think we need to be quite clear about where we stand as a nation in terms of industry and academic collaborations. So the current state is that Australia innovation output to market is quite low, and the ratio between GERD, which is the gross expenditure on R&D, and GDP is about 1.7, 1.8, something like that percent. And over the last 10 years, and OECD average is around 3.0, 3.2 or something like that. And in connection to this, innovation capacity for us is, according to the World Economic Forum, we are in the middle of the bottom range of OECD countries. We count as the 25th out of 132 countries. The Australian Economic Complexity Index, which is I know this sounds very theoretical, but these are good stats to have in mind. So the complexity index is the average knowledge where economic activity is conducted, and we score 87 out of 130. And mainly because we are very heavily skewed towards export of commodities and resources, and we need to diversify our export, and domestic manufacturing is a very important part of this. And then just continuing here, Australian businesses sophistication level and is quite low in terms of compared to OECD countries. All things being equal, I'm talking about business models, I'm talking about level of digitalization, funding, and level of risk appetite. And it's clear that Australia is a small business nation, and 99.8% of all businesses in Australia are considered as SMEs. And 1.5% of these SMEs has an annual turnover of more than 10 million, 1.5%. 68% has an annual turnover ranging between 50K and 2 million. 88% are employing 4 people or less. 62% are non-employee. So definitely there is an opportunity to change the situation, and giving Australia's resources and level of education and guts and is a Finnish word sisu, which is like that. And I see that as I've been here for 11 years now, and I see that very clearly. But we need to up the game for Australian industry. We have to increase competitiveness. We have to make better and stronger fit into multinational supply chains, reach into global supply chains and market and look at the export. On the other side, then, we have absolutely world-class research. We have 6 units among the world top 100. Sydney has 2. We have significant scientific breakthroughs. There is a small number of game-changing innovations, innovation nuggets, but rarely do you see commercial maturity. On the startup and spin-out side, initiatives are abundant, but often low quality and subcritical in funding and management. Same thing with patents. Patents filings and approvals have been very steady over the last, I would say, 15 years. And then again, looking at Australian industry profile, we have a limited environment or ecosystem to readily pick up early research and run with it and take it to market. So investment made in university research, knowledge and expertise are not aligned with industry collaboration and commercialization. And the kind of current collaboration we see today, in my opinion, is very ad hoc and random, and where resources and funding are fragmented without critical mass. So what can we do about this? So here we have 2 multi-billion parts of the society that rarely intersect with each other. We have to see to that Australian industry has to easier and get better access to academic knowledge, expertise, and facilities. And the universities, they have to build strategies and operations that allow for industry to easily access expertise and facilities. And I think that academia has a good role here to take the lead, asking industry the question, how can we help with our expertise and equipment? So I think that Australian industry and academia, they have to start collaborating more strategically, long-term, and more systematically, focusing on key industry sectors where distinct strongholds are evident. And strategically, I mean, there has to be a problem pull approach, and that can be in a multi-threaded way, crossing over multiple disciplines, involving the whole of organization, not just one narrow niche. We have to build long-term, high capability collaborative clusters in key industry sectors addressing industry needs. And long-term here means that we have to be able to sort of survive these projects, ups and downs in the collaboration. And again, research output needs to be better aligned with industry needs as a complement to blue sky research, which is also extremely important too. I'm not saying that we should, kick that out. It has to be there. If we do this, industry would be more readily able to pick up and run with innovations and commercialize, as they have been part of the development from the very beginning. Investors, same thing. They can see, they have a line of sight through the development, and maybe more or less risk averse towards putting money into project. I see government as an important part in this, as a Kickstarter. with seed grants and favorable loans, but no initiative should be reliant on government funds or subsidies for its survival. If that's the case, then it's poor business model. I think it should be industry-led, these collaborations. The industry should be a leader among equals and have a collaborative leadership. Very important to have a strategic global mindset, as I said before, supply chains, export collaboration across sectors and organizations globally. And operationally, how do we do this systematically? I think what I've learned here, and not only here, but also in Europe, it's about trust. How do we build trust? We have to thoroughly understand each partner's objectives, operating environments, timeframes, culture, and preparedness to adjust to convey flexibility. All involved have to understand what the problem to be solved is and what respecting contributions are. There has to be transparency, clear communication, and expectation management. Knowledge mobility is a key word for me. We have to have that as part of the operation. I'm talking about workplace exchange, secondments, internships, and so forth. When it comes to building projects systematically, I think there are many ways to do this, and I think it's being done, but I think there has to be very clear roadmap around this. So identify, qualify, having a work program, execute that work program in a very straightforward manner and with realistic timeframes and budgets, and then not the least nurture and grow the partnership for repeat business and scale up. And this then build a good platform to link up with other R&D projects or organizations or industry globally. So we have to sort of, we have to get visibility through that, but we have to also sort of connect ourselves with the rest of the globe. I think that's it for me for now.
I think that was a fantastic presentation, Anders. Thank you. And lots of interesting things to think about. And the next sort of section of this this segment is a panel discussion, and we've got Anders, Don Wright that I just introduced, David Fox, who is General Manager of LA Services and also transitioning into a Research Director role with Western City Parklands Authority. I hope I got it right, WPCA. And Kim Hosking, so is General Manager of Colmar Engineering, which is a precision engineering firm. So we've got quite a diverse expertise on panel here. So I'm going to ask a few questions of you. And off the back of your presentation, Anders, I think I'll start with you. I found it very interesting that you mentioned that innovation output in Australia is very low. Our innovation capacity is low as well. And economic complexity index, we also don't sit very high on. And also, I think, from your presentation, if I heard it correctly, there is a lot of research that's already happening through the universities, and there are a lot of patents that are coming out. So obviously, innovation is happening in the country. And from our experience, what we see on ground when we interact with the SME sector, there's a lot of innovation happening there as well. So given your background and your work, I would like to understand, are there any models that you have seen in other countries, perhaps, where the university industry collaboration is actually working to support the overall innovation that's happening on two ends? And, what are some of the things that we can do in Western Sydney and in Australia as well?
Mm-hmm. I don't think there is one model fits all. I think it has to be very tailored for the situations where we're in, locations where we're in, what the profile is for that location. For example, if we talk about in Western Sydney with manufacturing, I think we should definitely focus on manufacturing industry in that area, because that's definitely a stronghold, and it's definitely something that's needed. And it's an area where we have definite skills. And even though there may be some critical aspects of this, but I think, but just coming back to your question, the models, again, I don't think there's one model that fits all, but we can look at other examples of what they've done. And I know that people ask me, since I'm Swedish originally, and I've been working in the EU for a long time. People ask me, so how do people do it in the European Commission or European Union? And many times it's fun to give examples, but I don't think it's comparable. I think, again, the models that they've been using there, they've been using it for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I was very close to something called the Ideon Science Park in Lund, Sweden. That is a good model. That started in 1981 with Sony Ericsson, or Ericsson back then, working very closely with Lund Institute of Technology and the Department of Electronic Engineering, something like that. And they, after maybe 10 years or so, they developed the Bluetooth. Fine. But on the back of that, other followed. So AstraZeneca moved in. And back then, the local government, they provided land. And the Swedish television, they provided barracks, old barracks. These labs were, so it was very low scale. And it was not fancy at all. Now it's extremely fancy. If you go online and you take a look at Ideon Science Park, you will find it quite fancy. But so that's one. They've been around for a long time. Same thing in Germany. Many people, they talk about Germany as being, the mother of innovation 4.0, which you may say, but again, the collaboration between industry and academic organizations has been there for a long time too. We have the Fraunhofer Institute. They have 19 plus institutes across major sectors of the German industry. And of course, they research for industry. So we can't really compare with that. But what I think we can compare with is good examples in Australia, actually. So I've been fortunate enough to work with University of Sydney for a while, where Rio Tinto developed from, I think, started in 2007, something like that. And it's still ongoing, a very close relationship between the engineering faculty of University of Sydney. And it's about autonomous mines, and it's about automation, it's about smarts, and it's very high level. I was directly involved in another project together with CBA at Melbourne Uni, where we worked with the office here in Sydney around co-location. We looked at collaborative research in both in the humanitarian side of things, but also financial side of things. We had a PhD program and of course some kind of recruitment. But it was the whole of the uni approach, and I think that is one of the key things for industry. It's not only very, very narrow technical expertise that we can provide. We can provide a whole bunch of capabilities that hasn't been utilized before.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer. And what I'm hearing is that there is not one strategy, rather one model, as you say. There are different sorts of supports that we need to bring in from different levels to make this work and have an overall strategic intent to it. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I'll move on to David now. Now, David, you've worked in a manufacturing sector for a long time, and also done a lot of R&D collaboration with universities. So in your view, what sort of support does industry look out for when they talk to universities and when they have a mindset of transitioning to Industry 4.0 or advanced, as we say?
Thanks, Inu. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll give my opinion on that based on my experiences, particularly the more recent ones where I have been looking at it. So I think, the obvious response is access to STEM capabilities, important as you try and marry technology to industry problems. However, I don't really see that as the bigger problem, and I probably would have a couple of years ago seen that as the thing. I mean, and that's really what got us started. That technology was seen as the shiny thing in the sky that you should focus on. However, coming through the whole process over a couple of years, and then sitting back and looking at where we got to, I think that industry is typically technically brave anyway, and will take on problems and solving problems, whether that's reactive or proactive to market or customer demands. That's going to happen anyway. However, in saying that, access to STEM capability will certainly be a growing market, I think, for universities, particularly as we look at more collaboration and how to solve these problems. So that that's not to discard that, because Industry 4 is going to add complexity to products, and as Anders said, we have to add complexity to our products. So, and I think that also means user experience expectations are going to grow. So there's going to be a need for access to those capabilities to help small business build out things. But I think the less obvious, I guess, Industry 4 transition needs are going to be around identifying system integration possibilities. So agnostic system architecture particularly, and that's kind of drawing on my experiences of recent times. And really, that's what's going to underpin smart operational processes or smart products, depending on what you're focusing on. And the second pillar to that, I think, is, and you've touched on it, and so has Anders, is the business model architecture. Business development needs to learn to sell that value of the life cycle. Business has got to be able to do that, and whether that's a smart product or whether that's a smart service of some form, you've got to be able to look at it right through the whole bandwidth. So creating a competitive user experience, I guess, from inquiry right through to decommissioning is a far more complex problem. And building capability in that and competitive advantage in that is a pretty difficult task, for a small business to take on. And that's reflecting on, what I've been in small business and what I've done in the last couple of years. I think that's the fundamental problem that certainly LA Services is confronting now about how do we do that. So, I think universities, have really pushed entrepreneurship over a number of years, and that's a good thing. And maybe that was a nice place to start. It was a sexy arena, everyone was into it, it's pretty great. But I don't think that really presents the employment or economic footprint that's actually needed, particularly in Western Sydney, because it doesn't represent where you're going to get the most mileage from. I think Western Sydney, and I think Anders touched on this, was it needs more middle tier mature industrial businesses to really sort of get going, or smaller businesses to scale up, so they do become more prominent businesses and and really contribute to the economic activity and jobs. And I think Western Sydney as a region certainly needs that. And almost, in my mind, it's a bit of a loose analogy, but I kind of think of startups sometimes as like your plumber. They put on an apprentice, that's great, it's a nice thing to do, that's good. But what usually happens is it'll translate to that person going out and being another sole trader, maybe employing one or two people, and the incremental increase in complexity or capability doesn't really shift much from generation to generation. And so I think, getting the most leverage is going to come from getting these businesses, these maybe small to medium businesses, really upskilling and building capability. So I guess to answer your question, in a simplistic way, I think entrepreneurship is going to be a key need, as technology takes hold of customers and employers and society, and the demand for industry is increased. And I think that's the sort of complex problem that universities can really, really help with, is how do we kind of tackle those three pillars and uplift those small businesses to become those ones Anders has talked about.
Absolutely. And a very nice comprehensive answer, David. Thank you. I would agree on many points. And mostly on that Western Sydney not only needs to transition, but I think also has the potential to. And then there are some great other points that I want to touch on, but very conscious of time. Now, moving on to Kim. Kim, again, running a precision engineering firm in Western Sydney for a long time. I would like to sort of understand what's the ground reality for an SME like yours, and what sort of challenges do you face on a day-to-day basis, and how do you respond to those challenges?
Well, I guess like everyone else, I'm speaking, these are just my own opinions and speaking from the perspective of our small little insular world here at St Mary's. But I have to say a lot of what Anders said really resonated with me, and no offense taken, Anders, that our industry is unsophisticated. I couldn't agree more. And I also know that our universities are producing groundbreaking R&D on a regular basis. But the thing that I find is that none of those ideas are extensively commercialized locally. They're generally sold, they go offshore, and big multinationals, take off and run with it and produce it in the cheapest location in the world, and all our smart ideas fly away, as do a lot of our people. I think, a lot of the smartest innovators is certainly in an R&D space end up offshore in Europe, in Germany, in the US, and we lose them. And I guess we're one of those little businesses, I guess, that you're all talking about. We probably sit at the higher end of an SME. We employ 25 people currently, but we've had more, just over 30 is sort of the extent we've been at. We're an established business that, has capacity to be a cog in a wheel. We certainly don't have R&D capacity within our business, where we haven't got that sort of team of people. What we have is grassroots manufacturing, fitters and turners, blue collar workers, but with a lot of knowledge, very smart people, a lot of them European, a lot of them from other parts of the world, interestingly, and that could add a lot of value to, innovation that's prototyped, I suppose. But, we don't have the capacity to develop our own product. That was why we came to University of Western Sydney, because we were looking to somehow connect with the smarts, that, blue sky thinking, that maybe we could find a little niche that, we could be part of and work with, and as a result grow our business and take ourselves, to the next level, mainly to be sustainable into the future. We know that we're on borrowed time, spitting out shavings from lathes out the back. I mean, just today we were looking at a business that's been around since 1932, that's done work for us, induction hardening business, that's shutting down. 3 of our suppliers this year that are all established businesses, one of them more than 100 years old, this other one I looked at today, almost 90 years old, closing down. It's all over. So we're acutely aware that if we don't progress, we're on borrowed time. Yeah. That's why we're involved with you guys. But I don't see the right level of support from. I mean, you guys have talked about industry and universities, but I feel like there's government has to be involved in that, and I think the Europeans, government much more proactively engages in that 3-way partnership, I suppose, to ensure that the businesses know where the orders are coming from, that it's not just going to be sold and go offshore.
Yeah.
Certainly with the businesses we deal with, which are multinational companies, we find there's a real lack of interest. I said this at our last meeting, a lack of interest in Industry 4.1. They're not really looking to innovate their parts with us, the work that we do. We've had to do the bits of innovation that we've done regarding 3D printing with you and a bit of robotics within our own factory. We've done off our own back. Additive manufacturing is something that we're pretty interested in. And that's where we've spent a bit of time with University of Western Sydney looking at that. But certainly, we feel that there's capacity for businesses to engage, but the direction, I suppose, is not there.
Sure. I think, as you said, a lot more needs to be done, and the support needs to be, from all levels.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So thank you, Kim. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Karthik, I know we are over time, but I'm really keen to hear from Don as well, because of all the work that he's done over the last years, and he's got a vision for Western Sydney and Western Sydney manufacturing. So Don, and I know from working with you that and you understand that Western Sydney has a lot of potential. So in your thoughts, Don, what can we do to achieve that potential?
I'll be really quick because I know we are over time. So look, I think the key is really picking up on some of the stuff David said. The big economic development impact is from the medium companies. Look, startup companies, if you can grow them through to a really big size like a unicorn, and not even that big, but there's a big impact. But the more immediate impact is if you can add jobs in those medium-sized companies at a reasonable rate, you will get a really big uplift. So I suppose my observation around what we need to do is grow companies like Kim's. We have to get into these companies that have got good little businesses, that have got capabilities, and we've got to find their niche area and really get behind it and support it. So the three observations that I make that we really need, these companies need, and this is from working inside them and working as a university supporting them, I call it collaboration know-how. I mean, it's critical that businesses know how to work together in clusters so that they can access bigger projects, integrate with supply chains better, but they need to collaborate with universities as well. And Anders talked a lot about that. It's a process that you have to work through and understand, and it can be challenging, but it can be really rewarding. But we have to build skills around doing that, and integrating with supply chains as well. So there's a big job to do in terms of working with larger companies. So that collaboration know-how. I think innovation capability, and touching on what David said, that has to run across business model and technology. So it's not one or the other. And the really difficult part is to actually entwine those two and get towards an outcome where you can drive a new revenue or a new service or a new operation off the back of understanding how your business model needs to change, not just your product. I think that's probably a skill that's quite lacking in the industry. The other one is workforce. We can't get away from the fact that we have to train people. We have to have the skills to be able to pick up on the opportunities. We've got the Aerotropolis getting built. We've got, all these fantastic investment in Western Sydney. We've got big companies coming in, but unless we can service those projects, those opportunities, those big companies with the right sort of people, we will never get anywhere. And that's what they look to when they come and decide where to invest. One of the first things they look at is workforce. So, I mean, that's part of the reason we're doing what we're doing. And that's to come in and try and fill gaps around reskilling and upskilling through Launchpad, and offering that training platform where we can provide Industry 4.0 training that's focused on very applied context of smart products, smart factories, smart production, smart logistics. So we've got to be very targeted in the way we do. But they're the sort of three things that I pick out that I think, we focus on: that collaboration know-how, innovation capability, and workforce development. We could go for a lot longer, but that's a quick version.
Yeah, thank you, Don. I think that's a good summation of the discussion anyway. And thank you to all our panelists. Karthik, I know we're totally over time, 10 minutes over, and I don't know whether we have capacity for audience questions, but over to you. And just before I give it over to you, thank you, Kim, David, Anders, and Don.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Some really great points from you all. Unfortunately, we won't have time for any of the audience questions, but definitely if you do have questions, we'll definitely circulate Launchpad details and an email around, so you guys can send your questions through to Launchpad. But yeah, thanks all for coming, and hope to see you throughout the rest of the expo.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye. Thanks, Stephen. Bye-bye, everyone.